Hello, everyone, and welcome to another chapter of our boundaries journey. This is the Growth Journey with Gloria. So today we are looking at chapter 2 of Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. And the title of the chapter 2 is What Does a Boundary Look Like? And in the first chapter, we were introduced to the idea of boundaries. But in this chapter, chapter 2 of it, the author took it a step further and asked us a very important question. All right. And that question is, what do boundaries actually look like in a real life scenario or in a real life setting? And one beautiful thing I like about this chapter is that it becomes, this is where the chapter became, very practical and interesting, because sometimes we hear the word boundaries and think it means you're trying to push people away, or you're trying to be selfish, and or you're trying to refuse helping other people. But that's a no, that's not what it's all about. All right. um the author literally gave a good example of what boundary is all about, and that's one beautiful thing I love about them. They have a way of giving like a very practical examples. So the question now is, what is a boundary? Right. Think about it like a house. Say you have a house, or you bought a house in the UK, okay, or wherever that you are, residing at the moment. And there's always a line that separates your property from your neighbor's property, okay? And you know what belongs to you as a landlord or the owner of a property, and you know what belongs to your neighbor. You're responsible for taking off what is inside your property, what's inside your jurisdiction, your territory. But you don't wake up one morning and decide to control what's in your neighbor's property or in their own house. That's a no-no. You don't have any right to do that, okay? That's essentially what a personal boundary is all about. And it applies to our lives, it applies to our emotions, it applies to our choices, our money, our time, our relationships, our responsibilities, and even our behaviors towards one another. That's what boundary is basically all about. It's about what you can control within your zone, within your territory. Okay. And another beautiful thing the author did was to make us see that sometimes many of us really truly struggle with this. We think we can control what's in our own zone and try to also control another person's life or territory. That's wrong. It's totally wrong. But it's unfortunate that people still don't know about these things, right? And another thing the author did was to give us an example of people who struggle with taking other people's responsibility from of their lives from them. Imagine this scenario where a parent whose adult child continually makes irresponsible decisions in life, and the child spends lots of money carelessly. He doesn't take responsibility and continually gets into trouble. Okay. And every time this happens, the parents steps in to rescue. They're literally coming to rescue the child over and over again. They pay their bills, they make excuses for them. They say, oh, probably they have, because they are still not mature and all of that. And they help them solve their problems all the time. So that shows that they are always protecting the child from the consequences of their choices. And in all honesty, the parents may think, I'm doing this because I love my child, because I'm giving them room to grow at the age of its adult child, right? You know, but sometimes what we call love can actually become rescuing, because this scenario points out that the family or the parents are always trying to rescue the person from every consequences that can prevent that person from learning their responsibility, all right, as an individual. All right, there's a point where we can do that for our children, but there's also a point where we cut the boundary, cut the line. And sometimes loving someone means you're allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their choices. And that doesn't mean you've stopped caring for them. No, it means that you recognize that this is your responsibility. That's the child's responsibility and not yours. Okay. And same thing is applicable to our relationship with God. Whenever we fall into temptations and all, God will just watch us, even though we've been adopted as his children. He'll watch us until we'll come to the realization that we've done something bad, like the prodigal son, and then we'll run back to him. And his hands are wide open to accept us back. Okay. So another example is, for a person, if you have a friend who is struggling financially, right, and you wanted to help, you decide to help them. Now that's generosity. But if that friend repeatedly makes like irresponsible financial decisions now, and you continually feel obligated to rescue them from that consequences. You may need to establish a boundary. You may need to establish one. You can say to the person, "Hoi, I love you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I want the best for you, but I cannot continue taking this responsibility for this situation," especially when you are always giving them like advice on, you know, steps to take. But you can't force your advice on people, right? So if they decide not to take it, then you create the boundary. Now that's the boundary we are talking about. Establish a solid boundary for them to know that you're trying your best for them. Another thing is that many people are too quick to trust someone in the name of forgiveness and not make sure that the person is producing the fruit in keeping with repentance. Yeah, they need to show that. And to continue to open up yourself emotionally to um, an abusive person without seeing the genuine change in them. To me, it looks like foolishness. And sorry to use such word, but that's also what the author tagged it as. He said it's foolish. And I truly understand what he's saying. We can forgive people, right? We can forgive them, but we need to guard our hearts diligently because out of it comes out the issues of life. The Bible said that, especially for those that are Christians. Okay, you can forgive people, but guard your heart until you see a sustained change in them before you can let them in into your gates, right? You can open up your gates for them to come in again, which is very, very essential if you ask me. Boundaries also determine what comes in and goes out of us as individuals. I also love the way we can think about boundaries as having a gate, right? So, say a fence establishes where the property line is, but a gate determines what comes in and what goes out of your life, of yourself as an individual. So, in our lives, we need to ask ourselves very, very crucial questions like, what am I allowing into my life? What exactly is it that I'm taking in? When we consume a lot of information, what am I accepting into my body, into my soul and my spirit? Am I allowing people to constantly disrespect me as an individual? Am I allowing people to consume all my time? Am I really giving them my all? And at the point later on in the day, I get exhausted. Am I allowing guilt to control my decision making with respect to how I talk to people and how I try to be there for people? Am I allowing other people's expectations to determine everything that I do? All right. These are the things we need to ask ourselves on a day-to-day basis. Whatever decisions that we are taking, these things should come up first. And on the other hand, we also need to ask ourselves, what am I sending out there? What am I giving out from my own self as a being? Am I constantly giving my time away when I don't have the capacity? And I think I mentioned that in my chapter 1. When you don't have the capacity, you keep saying yes to things. Am I saying yes when I actually mean no? Am I taking on responsibilities that does not belong to me? These are the questions that help us recognize where our boundaries may need attention. Like, yes, the attention alert needs to be ringing so we know exactly what we are doing. All right. So, where can we apply this chapter in our day-to-day activities and day-to-day life? I want you to think about like 3 areas of your life, right? Just sit down, think about it. It's a new week, it's a new start. First, in your relationship, okay? Think about like, are you constantly trying to fix people? Yes, you really might be doing this, but not even know that it's a thing. All right. So when you think about it, you sit down and just have a preview of your conversations or your relationships with people and ask yourself that honest question. Another one would be, are you taking responsibility for someone else's happiness? All right. Thirdly, are you afraid to say no because you are worried about disappointing people? Maybe your boundary is learning to say, hey, I love you, but I cannot make this decision for you, especially when it has to do with life decisions or destiny changing decisions for people. Secondly, in your career and your workspace, are you constantly talking or taking on everybody else's responsibilities? I think I gave a scenario in the chapter 1 in the previous video. Okay. Are you afraid to tell people when your workload is too much? Maybe your boundary is learning to communicate your capacity clearly to your employers. I know we all said we can work under pressure, but then learn how to know when you have gotten to your elastic minute and can't continue. And thirdly, in your personal life, are you neglecting yourself because you're constantly trying to meet everyone's else's needs? Or do you feel guilty when you prioritize yourself? Perhaps your boundary is recognizing that taking care of yourself isn't selfish at all. So, a reflection for you guys today would be, as you finish watching this video, I want you to ask yourself a very genuine and sincere question. What am I carrying that doesn't actually belong to me? Yes, we can be carrying so much weight and so much burden in us without even realizing. So ask yourself this genuine question: what am I carrying that doesn't actually belong to me? Whose problems am I constantly trying to solve? Whose emotions am I taking responsibility for? Remember the scenario of the fence. All right. Where am I saying yes when I really need to say no? Okay. These are very crucial questions. And perhaps the biggest question for today's chapter would be, where in my life do I need to draw a clearer line between what is my responsibility and what belongs to someone else? You know, just like the chapter has mentioned, knowing what the real life boundary is all about. Because sometimes the boundary we need isn't necessarily a boundary we are going to put around on another person. Okay, it has to do with us. Sometimes the boundary is one we need to establish within ourselves as an individual. Yes, that's it. We need to learn it. We need to learn how to, say to ourselves, this is mine to carry and this is yours to carry. Yes, as easy as it sounds, a lot of people can't do that. So it's something we need to learn. You can pray for the person genuinely from the bottom of your heart, but know where to cut the line. So the final takeaway for today would be, if there is one thing I want you to take away from this chapter 2, it would be, boundaries are not walls designed to keep people out. They are not walls to take people off. They are healthy limits that helps us to understand our responsibilities. I can love you without taking responsibility for your choices. I can help you without rescuing you. I can support you without carrying so much of your burden. All right, what I can do at that point is to pray for you. And I can say no without becoming a bad person. So this week, I encourage you to look at your relationships, your work, your family, and even your personal life, and ask yourself that honest question: what is within my boundary and what isn't? And when you identify something that doesn't belong to you, give yourself permission to put it down. Love yourself well enough to take it down, let it go. Because healthy boundaries doesn't make us less loving. Okay, they teach us how to love people without losing ourselves in the process. Remember, here's a place of transformation and growth. Okay, so I hope you guys will be able to implement this. And thank you for joining me for the chapter 2 of Boundaries. I'll see you in the next chapter. Cheers. Bye.